becoming identified with anything is problematic, because this is about being outside of identification. I mean, okay, let's continue with that. Why is it an identification problem? It's not as such, because we have to identify with something. I could argue at this moment, I'm identifying with doing this because it's what I'm doing. And if I didn't identify with it, I would be a jellyfish and I wouldn't be able to talk and relate to you. You could say that, So, or another example, well, anything you do, you sort of, I suppose you have to identify with it in a way to be present to it in a way. Identify meaning you're in a role. So to fulfill the role, you have to say, I'm being a carpenter now, and I'm choosing that bit of wood, and I'm choosing the right screw, blah, blah. You can tell what I've been doing this morning. Yeah, but the moment you start thinking, I am a carpenter, and it defines you, or I am a spiritual teacher, or I am whatever, that's where identification becomes limiting, because it's like saying, I'm this, I'm something. Yes, you're that something at the moment, but we're actually everything. So I think that's why identification is potentially problematic. Yeah. But specifically in this, the big identification obviously is with personality. So the sort of things I've just said is the sort of thing that personality does. It likes to identify with roles, with achievements and stuff. And all of that is not necessarily bad or in any way. I got this exam, or I've achieved this in my life and I'm proud of it, or whatever. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. That's just life happening. But the bit where it goes wrong is where you've invested everything in identification and you think, this is all I am and I need this to feel okay. That's when it's a problem. So we've talked about why identification can be a problem, but then the next question is, well, why do we want to identify? And I think part of this is, well, I think it all goes back to the wound. We have this suffering and we have the loss of, the wound is the loss of, I was going to say identifying with everything, but it's not really identifying. Let's say being everything, the experience of being everything. And in that, then we become something. And then, so when the wound comes, there's all this stuff of like, lack of self-worth, and there's something wrong with me and all of that. So identification is a massive, a major way of building an edifice of like who I am. So, and it comes from not feeling that you're everything. So, and it comes from that pain of not feeling that you're everything. It comes from the pain of the wound. So you have to build up something as a structure, as a thing that you can reside within. And so the more you, from the personality's point of view, identification is what you want. It's the wall against the pain. Yeah. So I think that's a big part anyway of why we like to identify. But of course, in the world, nobody knows that. They don't think about the wound and stuff. They just identify, and that's it. There's a level of questioning you have to have, inquiry, to even get to this.